Salut, ça va? Santé?
Coucou, bienvenue from France. Welcome back to the show where we talk about life, different perspectives, and a petit peu du français, usually with a glass of wine or a spritz. Today is a spritz because it is Friday afternoon. It's been kind of a long week, but I'm happy to be here. And our topic today is things the French find completely bizarre. But before we get to that, I thought it would be interesting to share where this inspiration came from. So I was on the train coming back from Paris to Aix-en-Provence. So I took a solo trip to Paris, mostly for the podcast, but also honestly, just because I kind of felt like I needed some headspace and time alone, which is, if you're like anything like me, is nearly impossible to get. So I just went for 2 nights, like almost 3 days, and I've only taken a solo trip one other time in my life. Like that was about 3 years ago when we first moved here. I had always wanted to go to Copenhagen and see the design museum and just explore Denmark. And so I went there, and that was my first time I'd ever really taken a solo trip. And honestly, I kind of my first time felt like a fish out of water. I'm like, what am I doing here? And I have to eat alone. And how weird is this? And are people going to stare at me because I'm by myself? And I would say within a day of being there, I kind of got over that and I started to really enjoy just like being alone. And I could do what I want when I wanted. I booked restaurants I wanted to eat at. I went shopping at places I wanted to shop. I had no like real agenda. I didn't have to be anywhere. No one was asking me for anything. And I came back feeling super refreshed. And it's actually kind of where I started writing. I just brought a notebook along and I just started writing like whatever came to my head. And I would write if I was having lunch or if I was just observing things. And I don't know, it was a really good, like creative opening experience for me. And so I hadn't done it and I had promised myself I would try to go every year, but you guys know how life gets super busy. So I made the trip a couple weeks ago to Paris and got to stay in Isabel's wonderful apartment, which I posted her Airbnb link for those of you coming to Paris. But I wanted to kind of share just like things I observed that were interesting. So, two different elements. Okay, one, I had a lot of time to like actually just sit, think, be, write. And I tried to do that. I put my phone away. I just watched people. I really tried to embrace, I would say, what Paris does so well, which is just like joie de vie, like living in the moment. And that was something I really wanted to be super present for. And of course, my eyes always are like, oh, interesting fashion trends. What's going on in Paris right now? What are people wearing? And I also had a few friends reach out that are coming to Paris asking me what they should wear, what they should pack. And so I just thought it would be helpful. I'm going to say three things that I saw that were kind of like all over Paris and also here in X. So one of them is black and white polka dots. So these were everywhere. I actually went to a boutique in the 11th, which is a really cute boutique. I'm blanking on the name, but I will come back to you and put that in the show notes. And it had, oh, Janine, Mademoiselle Janine. Anyways, I'll put that in the show notes. And I was literally like, my eye was drawn to this. It was kind of like a black and cream jupe, a skirt. And there were three other Parisian women trying the same skirt on at the same time, which I thought was just funny because who would have known? And then I've just started to see black and white polka dots kind of everywhere. They're not like mini micro dots, but they're like medium sized polka dots, normally in a skirt or a dress. But I've seen some really cute kind of like halter tops with jeans. So, anyways, that's one trend. And the second thing I've seen a lot of, which has been going on for a while, but maybe more apparent because the weather is nice now, is like these mesh type ballerina Mary Jane flats. They're super cute. They're kind of like in between a sandal and a shoe. And I really want them actually. But that was another trend I saw. I think it's like a perfect street shoe because it's not too hot, but not like all the way to a sandal yet. It's a good like in between kind of spring, early summer shoe. And then the third thing I saw a lot of are like, they're like jorts, like Bermuda, I think is the name in the US, but they're like jorts. So they're basically long shorts that go to your knees, but they kind of bell out a little. They're a little bit baggy. I've seen them worn with a lot of like kind of crop tanks. They're mostly in denim. They're very cute. I would say kind of hard to wear. I'm short. I tried them on. It was not my look, but just also something I observed. So if you're packing and coming to France, those are kind of three things. And I'll post some pictures. I might kind of try to snap some when I see the trend. It might be a little awkward trying to take pictures of people around here, but that might be a good segue actually into our topic, which are things the French find completely bizarre. And I got inspired on the train back from Paris because I looked around and was like, huh, nobody has a water bottle out. And I was about to pull my water bottle out. I was like, people are reading like real books with hardcovers, real pages, no Kindles. And I'm like, huh, I wonder if there's something here that like is cultural or that maybe they are looking at me like, because if I'm doing something out of the ordinary, and I realized over the past 3 years we've been here, I have had lots of moments where I'm like, huh, that is definitely something the French are finding very strange that either I'm doing or that they're observing and I'm seeing them observe it. So I'm going to go through that today just because I think it's a fun topic. I also wrote about this on Substack and it was interesting because most of my things, like, some people read them. It's not like it's taking off, but this article, I had like 15,000 people already read it and so many comments. And so I thought it would be fun if I kind of shared what my observations are and hopefully you find it interesting too. So I'm going to tell you a story. The reason I wanted to talk about this was because when we first moved here, we're like 3 days in. It's August. It is so hot. We had just like moved into our house here and I was like, let's go into town. Let's try to get some lunch. The kids at the time were 3 and 5, or actually almost 4 and 6, super jet lagged, like just hot, whining, verge of meltdowns for sure. And so I'm like, all right, we quickly need to get them some lunch. I saw this place that said like pasta to go. I'm sure it was like the worst pasta, but I didn't even care. I'm like, oh, it's familiar. They like pasta, butter, Parmesan, done. So they give us like the wooden, like little cutlery. And then across from there was a place called French Tacos. And I'm like, oh gosh, tacos sound awesome. We were moving from California. I love Mexican food. Just don't make the mistake. Anything that says tacos in France, unless you're in Paris at like an actual Mexican restaurant, is not actually tacos. They are kind of like rolled pitas, and we got them in a bowl, and it was literally like there was like fried chicken and French fries and like melted cheese and some strange, unidentifiable chopped meat. So, anyways, I didn't even care. I was like, we're eating this. It's definitely not tacos. But so we got our wooden cutlery and I was like, oh God, there's an open bench in the shade. It was like near the fountain on Cour Marabout, which is like the main area. And we just start like eating. The kids are sweating. I realize they need sunscreen. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put some sunscreen on. I've got my plate half open. I probably have a fork in one hand. And people started really looking at us strange. Like, I'm sure we look like a hot mess, but at the same time, not like looks of just like they look kind of different. It was looks like, what are they doing? And in fact, an older man passed by us and he just kept staring and staring. And he looked down at the pasta container that now my daughter had like spilled Parmesan all over the floor. And he just said, Bon appetit, with like a very sarcastic laugh as he walked away. And I was like, oh gosh, we just moved here. Now people are making like strange comments. And I'm like, people, you know what? People might be right. The French are rude. And it was like confirmation bias that people had said to me. And so at the time, like that was my takeaway. And now I learned what's happening 3 years in, maybe a little shortly after that. It's not what we were eating that was so strange. It was how we were eating it. So in France, meals aren't something you just like squeeze in between errands or quickly try to like just get for energy so you can like get on to the next thing. I've learned you like just don't like inhale pasta or fake French tacos from a random like cardboard container with wooden cutlery while you're like wiping sunscreen and checking your phone and doing 8 million other things. No, you sit down, you put the phone away, you eat a real meal. Okay. You pause between bites. It's even like even on a random Tuesday, you would do this. Okay. It's a meal is something that deserves attention here. I will say, if you absolutely have to eat like on the go, I will say it should be something you hold in your hands. You should not be using like wooden or plastic spoons and forks and sitting somewhere trying to eat out of a container. You can like I see people walking around with like a sandwich, like a baguette, a folded slice of pizza. They actually have those to go and they fold the pizza in half for you so you can like eat it on the go. A crepe is also okay, like especially for children after school, but just très bizarre if you're going to eat like with plastic silverware. And so I kind of get that now because I love the meals and those being something really special and preserved in France as kind of a moment of pause and to actually like enjoy your food and your company. The other thing I've also realized is because we've had a lot of visitors and people will tell me, "Oh, I'm gluten free," or "I'm on keto," or "I don't eat this," and we'll go out with them and they're like, "Can we substitute this for this?" Like, let's say they got like, I don't know, let's just call it like a poisson, like a fish of the day, and it has vegetables and maybe rice, and they want to substitute one of those things out. That's like not very doable here. Like the chef has purposely curated the dish that each kind of accompaniment, like the things on the side that go with the main dish, all work together in a cohesive meal, likely with the sauce that kind of goes with all of them. So it's not very common that somebody, I would say at a restaurant especially, is going to accommodate substitutions. The French also, if you're on, us Americans like are always, at least I was, like on some kind of random diet, like, "Oh, I'll try keto or I'll read this about this book." And that's just not very common here. Like you will not be surrounded by people that will be like, "Oh, here, there's an entire place where you can get all keto friendly food." Like it doesn't really exist. Like obviously, if you have like allergies and things, there are a lot of gluten-free options. There's, options if you're lactose intolerant, but there's not, I wouldn't say it's like common here to come here and have a million restrictions and not be able to eat much of the food. I think the French really believe in eat real foods, eat good quality, eat high quality food, and don't snack in between meals and kind of keep it simple. So that's kind of one other thing I observed. The other funny thing, so I kind of just been because it's like getting to the start of tourist seasons, observing how I can now immediately spot an American or a tourist. And for Americans, like my number one dead giveaway is the oversized water bottle. So this is like the giant Stanley with the handle. These are now like the brightly colored Owala water bottles. They used to be like the Yetis. Like, obviously if you're American and you're listening to this, you're very familiar because it's almost like water bottles are like cool trends in the US. And here, like French just find them so bizarre. Like they're definitely not admiring them. They are looking at them and like, why do you need that much water? Like, are they kind of like crossing the Sahara Desert? Like, why would you need to carry around this like ginormous jug of water all day? And so you would rarely see a French adult carry around a huge water bottle. They might like discreetly have a reusable small water bottle like tucked into their bag, but never like overtly carrying it. Or the best I saw in Paris was like somebody actually had like a purse that was just a water bottle holder. So it was like crossbody and it held her Stanley water bottle. And I was like, that's interesting. And so it's, if you're an adult and you're French, you're likely only going to drink water at meals. It's likely going to be from a glass, like a glass verre, like this cuckoo one. And it's probably going to be at room temperature. There's probably not going to be a lot of ice in it. Doesn't really matter, or any ice, I should say. Doesn't matter how hot it is. So that said, the other thing never to do, if you do want to carry around your big giant water bottle, which, once in a while, I totally get it. Like it's starting to get very hot here. Just like don't set it on the cafe table or the restaurant table when you get there. I used to do this and I think it like immediately sort of just sets a tone with the waiter of like, why is that on the table? So that's just one other thing. The other thing I would say is also a giveaway, which I still do because I love to do it, is like carrying around a coffee on the go. Like most people believe that if you're going to get a coffee, it's meant to be enjoyed like sur place, which means at the actual venue in a real glass. But you see this more and more common. I definitely saw a lot of people still carrying coffee in Paris, but it's definitely more, I would say, the younger generation. You will not see that many like older French people carrying around a cafe. They'll have an espresso at the actual cafe they're at and then move on with their day. There's also not a lot of like iced coffees, like iced lattes, etc. There are definitely more and more places, but like today, for example, I went after I dropped the kids off on the bus and I just really wanted an iced latte. It's like a very hot day. And I ordered like it's called glacé here. It means like with ice. And they served it in just like a regular coffee cup with no straw and it was hot and then they just put a few ice cubes in. So it's not like you're getting this like if you are used to like a delicious iced latte and, with a straw the whole thing, it's kind of not that situation. So just a small thing to note if you also enjoy your coffee in place, if you want to look like you're kind of fitting in with the culture. And again, I should say, like, you don't have to do these things. This is just more my observations. Like, I think somebody commented, like, who gives an F what the French think? And that's 100% true and fine. And like, I'm only sharing this because I think it's interesting and just to observe the cultural differences between how I grew up and now where I'm living. So I'm really doing it from that perspective. The other story I wanted to share with you guys, because I think it's just so culturally different. I have a good American friend who works in kind of like a beauty fashion company in New York, and she came to Paris. It was her first corporate event, and she was meeting kind of like the French team, and she smiled at it was like a man, probably a few years older than her, and they were going to be working together. So she gave him like a nice, warm, I would say American friendly, open smile. And I guess they passed each other a few more times that evening. Then she was at the bar, she's just started chatting with him, smiling, ordered a glass of wine. She said she was not trying to flirt in any way. It was just being, in her opinion, friendly. And later he asked her if she was a prostitute. She was not dressed like one. It wasn't like this situation, but it was the smile that gave it away. And apparently, I've learned if a woman smiles at a stranger, especially and a strange man, it can be perceived as like a sexual invitation or a flirtation. And that's kind of common. And I actually talked to a few of my French friends. They're like, oh, I could definitely see that happening, which I just found shocking because I don't even think if you thought that in the US at a corporate event, you would even have you wouldn't say that to someone. So I think like this is also something, and every single person, like my mother in law was just here, and she's like, why don't the French ever smile? Why is nobody ever smiling? And I said, I think it's just cultural. Like in the US, like smiling, I call it like social currency. It's like we smile at people when we pass them on the street, or if we're on a hike, we say hello and we smile. In an elevator, like you would give a smile to someone ordering coffee, even if you're like in a bad mood that day or something, you might still, share a few smiles as you pass people by, even if they're strangers. But it's not that the French aren't friendly. I've noticed. It's just that they kind of reserve their openness and friendliness like to let it unfold over time. It's not something immediate. It's not something they just are going to like give out because it feels good. And that's just something I would say is very cultural. To be honest, like I really miss the smiling. Like I think it just I don't know, I think it just kind of feels good to exchange a brief smile with someone. And honestly, it's not like it never happens here. I still do it once in a while, especially if it's like another mom and she's with her kids and I'm with mine. There can be like kind of a slight acknowledgement. I would say it's definitely not like a big open toothy smile. It's probably more of a like a closed-lipped small smile. If you can watch me, I'm kind of like that. Okay. The next thing. So, all right, this one's kind of a big one. Loud talking. I never realized how loud Americans are, and probably me as well, when we're out, like walking down the street, sitting anywhere, like at a restaurant, general conversation, even the phone. I'm like, why are people screaming into the phone? And now I feel that way, but I never noticed it. And apparently, a lot of people have commented too that everybody knows Americans are loud. And now, like, I just kind of almost find it jarring. Like I was at a cafe the other day and these people, like it was a group of, younger girls. They were probably, I don't know, maybe half a mile away, like kind of far, but I could already hear their conversation down the street. It was like this animated storytelling. The volume was like as if the whole street should hear this conversation. They're big, like, the big reactions. And it was literally like, it was like, oh my God, stop. Literally, no way. Wait, tell me everything. We all know this because I talk like this. I have talked like this. There's nothing judgmental or wrong about it. It's just that all of a sudden it's just very noticeable, I would say, in a country where like discretion and like I would say being more quiet and reserved is generally the culture. Like every French table, like even if I'm sitting super close, and I not that I understand every word in French either, but even if I did, it's like a murmur. Like it's very hard to, I would say it's really only meant to be shared, whatever they're talking about, with that person that's also sitting very close with them. And this is not just like in a cafe. This is in all, I would say, public spaces like trains or a boutique, like for shopping, a cafe. It's just that it's not, the conversation's meant to stay between the people that are having it and not to be shared with everything else. And it's not that they're less expressive. Like if you have a conversation, with a French person, they're definitely very expressive. It's just not at a super loud volume. They also value, I would say, discretion. Like Americans, people always tell me this. They're like, you just reveal information like so quickly and open, like to someone you may not even know very well. So we might share, like, I don't know, a relationship probably, or complain about our work like situation or how much money we're making or a breakthrough we had in therapy or some family drama, whatever it is. Like, I would say it's kind of more out on the table in the US where the French are much more likely to hold back, and privacy is very, very important to them. And a little bit of mystery, I would say, in a good way. And so I would say, like, opening up with a French person takes a long, long time. And they're actually kind of taken aback when Americans are, they'll call it like oversharing. And I kind of thought, like, at first, I'm like, that's kind of cold. Like, I like the oversharing sometimes. But then now when I visit the US, I'm like, oh my gosh, does like every little thing need to be announced and every moment be this like, grand stage to share things? And do we need to fill every moment of silence with some sort of conversation that's at a loud volume? So I think it's a personal preference, but I will say that's definitely something that will get looks if you are visiting France and you are incredibly speaking at a very loud volume. I have gotten yelled at, I wouldn't say yelled at, let's call it scolded by the French many, many times when I've had American friends and we are drinking wine and everyone starts laughing and then the conversation gets louder and louder. And I've had French people in other tables go, shh, or try to say in English, like, quiet, because they believe like if you are raising the volume of the restaurant, then everybody else has to talk louder to hear the person. And pretty soon it's like everybody is screaming. And so now if I have American friends visiting, I try to choose restaurants that I know are, let's just call it like more open of being loud and not ones that I know are like kind of more discreet and prefer, softer conversation. So now I kind of laugh about it because I'm like, who cares? But it definitely is, I would say, something culturally that's just very different. Okay, the other thing, if you are constantly rushing around, like you visit Paris or any other city or small town in France, the French are very confused by why people are like Americans especially are always rushing, like running to the metro, like they have to make this tour or I've got to do this. They're eating while they're walking. They are, scheduling things like so tightly to try to squeeze so much in. And I think about it and like in the US it's very normal to have like back-to-back activities and sports that kids play and then you go to the birthday party and then you've got errands to run and it's like whew, I'm getting like exhausted just saying all this. Like it's like productivity layered on top of productivity. And in France, if you, let's say it's Monday morning and you're dropping your kids at school and you're chatting with another mom, if you say, oh, it's such a busy weekend, That is not like something you might get a strange look because it's not something they are like admiring, like, oh, that's awesome. You had a busy weekend. They're like, it's like they're concerned. Like the look you get kind of implies, like, well, why would you do that to yourself? Why would you live like that? Why would you schedule like overschedule? Why wouldn't you have like space in between things and time? And I just think now I'm like, yeah, totally. It makes sense. I love that kind of thing. Like I love not overscheduling weekends. And I make a really big effort, I would say, living here to not worry so much that my kid needs to be in every activity and try every kind of sport and do all these extracurriculars. Like I now am in a place where I'm like, pick one thing. We do one thing on Wednesdays. Our weekends aren't jam packed with 8 million kids' activities. We say no to birthday parties if they're not someone close, like a close friend of of my children. And it kind of just frees space to actually live, be, relax, let the kids not be like anxious and running around. And I think it makes a difference. So, something I actually prefer here. And then also, like, just remember that, people are there. Like, you're visiting a country and you're meant to really enjoy yourself. Like, that's why you might sit at a table and a waiter won't come around for 20 minutes, or you'll never get your check unless you ask for it. Like, they are not trying to quickly flip things for profit or get on to the next group. Like it's much more like the whole being there, the meal, the company, the experience, like that's the point, not the rush to cram a million things in and be super busy. So if you kind of just keep that in mind, and if you meet a French person that I would say, like, when you're starting to get to know them, like, do not immediately talk about your job or your profession or what you do for a living. Like, I know that's very common in the US. It's not very well respected here. Like, work is work and it's a component of your life, but not something you lead with. I would say, enjoyable experiences are meant to talk about more enjoyable things like art or culture or movies or things that I would say are outside of like a day to day work. Like some French friends I have, they said they have no idea what some other moms actually do for a living and what they work in because even though they're friends, it doesn't really come up as often. So, just one thing, it's like looked at as a component of their total identity, not their sole purpose for being, which sometimes honestly it could feel like that for me in the US. So, all that to be said, what do you take away from this? Okay, a few things. Like, first of all, you should be you, do what you want, where you want, when you want. Like, that is my number one takeaway from this. I think if you are interested in coming to France and, being part of the culture, these might just things that you might want to kind of avoid because they are considered very bizarre in the French culture. And for me, like, I feel like when I was living in the US, I was just very conditioned to convenience, speed, optimizing things, like constant efficiency, self improvement. Like, it's just like exhausting. And the French kind of notice that Americans do this. And that's why they look puzzled. I don't really think they're trying to be rude. I don't think they're really like all the time like judging that that's bad or that's wrong. I think like some of the habits just look really strange to them. And honestly, like sometimes now that I think about them, they are kind of strange to me too, that it's just kind of accepted as a norm in the US. And so, I think there's good and bad, like everything in every culture. And the things I sort of want to adapt still from the US are like, I'm still going to smile if I want to smile. I still love a fun, loud restaurant and laughing with friends and drinking wine. And I'm not going to change that. I'm probably going to more seek that out here. And so I think you can kind of, be yourself, pick and choose. And, let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any other habits that you think are strangely bizarre, or if you're French, if you agree with these. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I'm going to end with I first of all want to say thank you for everyone who's listening and who has left comments. They mean so much to me. And I read every one of them. I respond to every one of them. And I wanted to start sharing them on the show because I think it's just really cool that you guys are taking the time to write. So I'm reading two today, and I'll probably try to read two or three every episode. So this one is from Victoria Garces 12. She said, "Great episode, Kim. I am dreaming of moving to France. I love how you mentioned pros and cons that I haven't heard before. A very realistic point of view. Thank you." Thank you, Victoria. Then I had someone, Ty Nosakam, and said, I just stumbled on this podcast. Very useful information and great insights. Thank you. I will be listening again. So just really appreciating the comments. And thank you again. Let me know what you thought and be sure to follow on cuckoo.pod and a bientôt. Bye.